arrogant woman slapped a poor man in public. Then he stepped out of a private jet on her engagement. The afternoon sun blazed mercilessly over the bustling streets of Accra, Ghana. The air was thick with the mingled scents of roasted plantains, exhaust fumes, and the salt-tinged breeze drifting in from the Atlantic Ocean. Makola Market hummed with life, traders shouting their wares, car horns blaring in frustration, and the rhythmic calls of hawkers weaving through traffic with their goods balanced expertly on their heads. Outside the gleaming glass facade of the Silverbird Shopping Center, the city's wealthy elite came and went in their expensive cars, their designer clothes a stark contrast to the everyday Ghanaians who passed by with curious glances. It was here, in this crossroads between wealth and struggle, that everything began. Ajoa Mensah stepped out of her white Range Rover, her Louboutin heels clicking against the hot pavement. At 28, she was stunning. Her skin the color of polished mahogany, her body wrapped in a form-fitting emerald dress that probably cost more than most people earned in 3 months. Gold bangles jangled on her wrists, and her Brazilian weave cascaded down her back in perfect waves. She owned 3 successful beauty salons across Accra and never let anyone forget it. Money had always come easily to Ajoa. Born into privilege, raised with every advantage, she had learned early that wealth was power, and power meant you could look down on those who had less. As she strode toward the entrance, adjusting her oversized Gucci sunglasses, she didn't notice the elderly man walking a few paces behind her. He was thin, perhaps in his early 60s, wearing a faded brown shirt with patches at the elbows and trousers that had seen better days. His worn rubber sandals slapped softly against his feet as he walked, and his graying hair was covered by an old cloth cap. He was simply walking in the same direction, lost in his own thoughts. Ajoa suddenly stopped to answer her phone, and the old man, not expecting the abrupt halt, nearly bumped into her. She spun around, her eyes blazing with fury. "Are you blind?" she snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. The old man stepped back, raising his hands apologetically. "I am very sorry, madam. I did not mean—" "You did not mean what?" Ajoa interrupted, her voice rising. "You did not mean to follow me like some pervert? You did not mean to invade my personal space?" "Madam, please, I was only walking." "Shut up!" she screamed, drawing the attention of everyone nearby. People stopped what they were doing, turning to witness the confrontation. "Look at you. Look at your filthy clothes. Look at your dirty, worn-out sandals. You probably have not bathed in days, and you dare to walk so close to me." The old man's face showed deep sadness, but he remained calm. "Madam, I meant no disrespect. I am just an ordinary person trying to." Before he could finish, Ajoa's hand flew through the air. Slap! The sound echoed across the parking lot like a thunderclap. The old man's head jerked to the side, his cap falling to the ground. A red mark bloomed across his weathered cheek. Gasps rippled through the growing crowd. "That is what you get for not knowing your place," Ajoa hissed, her chest heaving with rage. "Poor people like you think you can go anywhere, do anything. You think because Ghana is a democracy, you are equal to people like me? You are nothing. You hear me? Nothing." A young woman in the crowd stepped forward, her face twisted with anger. "Sister, what is wrong with you? That man did nothing to you." Ajoa whirled on her. "Did I ask for your opinion? Mind your business before I deal with you too." An older man, perhaps in his 50s, moved closer. "My daughter, this is not right. He is someone's father, someone's grandfather. You cannot treat him this way." "Someone's father?" Ajoa laughed, a cold, bitter sound. "Look at him. If he has children, they have obviously abandoned him because he is worthless. That is what happens to useless, poor people. Even their own families do not want them." The old man bent slowly to pick up his cap, his movements deliberate and dignified despite the humiliation. He placed it back on his head and looked at Ajoa one last time. His eyes held no anger, only a profound sadness that seemed to pierce through her fury. "I pray that God softens your heart," he said quietly. "I pray that you learn compassion before life teaches you the hard way." "I do not need prayers from beggar," Ajoa spat. "I have money. I have power. I have everything I need. Now, get out of my sight before I call security to throw you out like the trash you are." The old man turned and walked away slowly, his shoulders slightly hunched. The crowd parted to let him through, many people touching his arm gently or murmuring words of sympathy as he passed. Ajoa watched him go with satisfaction, then turned on her heel and marched into the shopping center, her head held high. She had put him in his place. She had shown everyone that she was not to be trifled with. But she did not see the man in the dark suit standing near a black sedan across the street, speaking urgently into his phone. She did not see the flicker of recognition in his eyes or the concern that creased his brow. She had no idea that the old man she had just humiliated was not what he seemed. And she certainly had no idea that her entire life was about to change. Ajoa's mother, Amma Mensa, sat in the spacious living room of their family home in East Legon, one of Accra's most exclusive neighborhoods. At 55, she was still beautiful, with the same rich skin tone as her daughter, though softened by age and wisdom. She wore a simple but elegant kaba and slit, her hair wrapped in a colorful head wrap. Unlike her daughter, Amma had known poverty. She had grown up in a small village in the Volta region, where her family struggled to put food on the table. She had worked as a seamstress, her fingers bleeding from needle pricks, saving every sadi until she could move to Accra and start a small business. Through hard work, intelligence, and a bit of luck, she had built an empire. She had married well, though her husband had passed away 10 years ago, and she had given her only daughter every advantage she herself had never had. But in giving Ajoa everything, she had somehow failed to teach her the most important lesson: that wealth does not make you superior to others. When Ajoa came home that evening, triumphantly recounting the story of how she had put a dirty old beggar in his place, Amma's face fell. "You did what?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Ajoa, lounging on the leather sofa and scrolling through her phone, barely looked up. "I slapped him, Mama. He deserved it. He was following me, getting too close. These poor people have no boundaries." Amma stood up, her hands shaking. "Ajoa Mensa, I raised you better than this. How could you strike an elderly man? How could you humiliate someone in public?" Ajoa finally looked up, irritation flashing in her eyes. "Mama, please. Not this lecture again. That man was nothing. Nobody. Why are you so concerned about him? Because he is a human being." Amma's voice rose, something that rarely happened. "Because he is someone's father, someone's child. Because you do not know his story, his struggles, his pain. Because treating people with cruelty says nothing about them and everything about you." Ajoa rolled her eyes. "Mama, you grew up poor, so you have sympathy for poor people. I understand, but I am not you. I was born into money. I have worked hard to build my own success. I will not apologize for knowing my worth." "Your worth?" Amma repeated, tears forming in her eyes. "Child, your worth has nothing to do with your bank account. Your worth is in your character, your kindness, your humanity. And right now, you are showing me that despite all I have given you, you have learned nothing about what truly matters." "What truly matters is respect," Ajoa countered, standing up. "And people respect money. People respect power. That old man learned today to respect his betters." Amma shook her head slowly, her heart breaking. "My daughter, I have failed you. I gave you wealth, but forgot to give you wisdom. I gave you comfort, but forgot to teach you compassion. And now I am watching you become someone I do not recognize." "Mama, you are being dramatic." "No," Amma said firmly. "I'm being honest. And I'm telling you now, pride comes before a fall. The universe has a way of teaching us lessons we refuse to learn gently. I pray that when your lesson comes, it does not destroy you completely." Ajoa grabbed her designer handbag. "I do not need to hear this. I'm going out." Ajoa, but her daughter was already gone, the door slamming behind her. Amma sank back in her chair, her face in her hands. She whispered a prayer, the same prayer she had been praying for years. "God, please touch my daughter's heart. Please show her the truth before it is too late." Across the city, in a stunning mansion in the hills overlooking Accra, a different conversation was taking place. Kwame Asante stood in his study, a glass of whiskey in his hand, staring out at the glittering lights of the city below. At 35, he was one of the youngest billionaires in Ghana. His tech company, Asani Tech, had revolutionized mobile banking across West Africa. He employed thousands of people. His investments spanned multiple industries. Forbes had named him one of Africa's most influential entrepreneurs. But despite all his success, Kwame had one problem. He could not find love. Real love. Authentic love. Love that existed beyond his bank account. Every woman he met saw only his money. They saw the cars, the houses, the private jets, the lifestyle. They smiled sweetly, said all the right things, laughed at his jokes, and agreed with his opinions. But none of them truly saw him. Kwame the man, not Kwame the billionaire. His father, Kofi Asani, had warned him this would happen. The door to the study opened, and the old man himself walked in. He looked tired, his clothes dusty and worn. He removed his cloth cap and sat down heavily in a leather chair. "How was your day, Papa?" Kwame asked, though he already knew the answer would trouble him. Kofi sighed deeply. "I met another one today." Kwame turned from the window. "Another what?" "Another woman who looks at the poor as if they are animals. Another person who believes money makes them better than others." Kofi's hand unconsciously touched his cheek, and Kwame's eyes narrowed. "Papa, did someone hurt you?" "A young woman slapped me today," Kofi admitted quietly. "Outside the Silverbird Center. I was simply walking, and she accused me of following her. She called me dirty, worthless, nothing. She hit me in front of everyone." Rage flashed across Kwame's face. He set his glass down with more force than necessary. "Papa, I have begged you to stop this. Why you keep going out there, disguised as a poor man? You do not need to put yourself through this humiliation." "Yes, I do," Kofi said firmly, his eyes meeting his son's. "Sit down, Kwame. Let me tell you again why this matters." Kwame sat, though his jaw was tight with frustration. "Your mother was beautiful," Kofi began, his voice soft with memory and pain. "When I met her, I was nobody. I was working 3 jobs, trying to start a small business, living in one room with no running water. But she said she loved me. She said money did not matter. She said we would build our future together." Kwame had heard this story before, but he listened quietly. "Then I lost everything," Kofi continued. "The business failed. I could not find work. We had nothing but love, I thought. But I was wrong. Your mother started looking at me differently. She started comparing me to her friends' husbands, who had cars and nice houses. She started complaining, nagging, making me feel like less than a man." Kofi's voice cracked slightly. "And then one day, when you were only 5 years old, she left. She said she had wasted enough of her life on a failure. She said you deserved better than a poor, useless father. She took her things and walked out, and I never saw her again." Kwame's hands clenched into fists. The abandonment still hurt, even 30 years later. "I rebuilt everything from nothing," Kofi said, his voice growing stronger. "I worked until my hands bled. I sacrificed everything to give you opportunities one never had. I built this empire so you would never suffer the way I did. But I also learned something crucial. I learned that many people only love what you can give them, not who you are." He leaned forward, his eyes intense. "That is why I go out there, my son. That is why I disguise myself as a poor man. Because I need to find you a woman who sees beyond wealth. A woman who treats a beggar with the same respect she would treat a king. A woman whose heart is genuine, not gold-plated." "But Papa, you're putting yourself in danger." "What if? I have security following me at a distance," Kofi assured him. "They're always watching. Today they wanted to intervene, but I told them not to. I needed to see how far that woman would go. I needed to see her true character." "And what did you see?" "I saw a soul corrupted by privilege," Kofi said sadly. "I saw a beautiful woman with an ugly heart. I saw someone who needs to learn humility, but may have to learn it the hard way." Kwame stood and walked to the window again. "So, we continue waiting, searching, testing every woman I meet. Until we find the right one," Kofi confirmed. "And we will know her, my son. When you meet a woman who treats everyone, rich or poor, with equal respect and dignity, That is when you will know you have found someone worthy of your love. Kwame nodded slowly. He trusted his father's wisdom, even when it was difficult. There is something else, Kofi added. That woman today, her name is Ajoa Mensah. My security team did some research. She owns beauty salons. She is wealthy in her own right. And for what they tell me, she has been trying to get your attention at various social events. Kwame's eyes widened. Ajoa Mensah? The one with the long weave and the loud laugh. Yes. Papa, she has been pursuing me for months. She is always wherever I go, charity galas, business conferences, society weddings. She finds ways to be near me, to talk to me. And what do you think of her? Kwame shrugged. I barely notice her, honestly. She seems, I do not know, too eager, too polished. Everything about her feels rehearsed, like she is performing rather than being genuine. Trust that instinct, Kofi advised. Now that I know she is pursuing you, I will watch her more carefully. If she is the woman I met today, cruel, arrogant, disrespectful to those she considers beneath her, then she must never become part of this family. Agreed, Kwame said. But Papa, please promise me you will be more careful. I cannot bear it if something happened to you. Kofi smiled and stood, walking to his son and placing a weathered hand on his shoulder. I promise. And remember, the right woman is out there. We just have to be patient. After his father left, Kwame stood alone in his study, his mind racing. Somewhere in this city of millions, there was a woman with a true heart, a genuine spirit, a soul that valued character over cash. He had to believe that, because without that hope, all his wealth meant nothing. 3 weeks passed. During that time, Ajoa launched a calculated campaign to win Kwame's heart, or more accurately, to secure access to his wealth and status. She accidentally bumped into him at the Movenpick Ambassador Hotel during a business luncheon. She joined the same gym where she had heard he occasionally worked out. She made sure to attend every high society event where he might appear, always dressed impeccably, always laughing at the right moments, always positioning herself in his line of sight. Kwame, despite his reservations, found himself drawn into conversations with her. She was beautiful, certainly. She was intelligent when discussing business. She said many of the right things. But something fell off. He could not quite put his finger on it. Ajoa, for her part, was careful to hide her true nature when around Kwame. She smiled sweetly at waiters. She spoke politely to security guards. She donated publicly to charities, though the amounts were calculated for maximum publicity with minimum financial impact. She crafted an image of a successful, elegant woman who was both beautiful and benevolent. One evening, an art gallery opening in OSU, Kwame finally asked her to dinner. Ajoa's heart soared. This was it, the breakthrough she had been working toward. They dined at Santoku, one of Accra's most exclusive restaurants. Over expertly prepared sushi and sake, they talked about business, travel, and ambitions. Ajoa was the perfect companion, engaging, attractive, seemingly caring. Tell me about your family, Kwame asked, genuinely curious. It is just my mother and me, Ajoa said, her voice softening in what seemed like vulnerability. My father passed away 10 years ago. He was a wonderful man, generous, kind, always helping others. I try to live by his example. The lie came easily. Her father had been kind, yes, but she had learned nothing from his example. That must have been difficult, Kwame said with sympathy. It was, Ajoa replied, reaching across the table to touch his hand lightly. But it taught me to value the people in my life, to treat everyone with respect and kindness, because you never know when they might be taken from you. The irony of her words would have been laughable if it were not so tragic. Their courtship continued over the following weeks. Kwame introduced her to his business associates. They were photographed together at events, sparking gossip columns and social media speculation. And through it all, Kofi watched. He watched how Ajoa behaved when she thought no one important was looking. He saw her snap at a parking attendant who was too slow bringing her car. He observed her roll her eyes at an elderly woman who moved too slowly in line at a cafe. He noted how her smile vanished the moment Kwame turned away, replaced by cold calculation. She is the one who slapped me, Kofi confirmed to his son one evening. "I am certain of it. I have watched her. I have followed her. Everything she shows you is an act." "Papa, are you sure? She has been nothing but kind when I am with her." "That is exactly my point," Kofi said. "She's kind when you're watching. But the true measure of a person is how they behave when they think no one is looking, or when they think the person looking does not matter." But Kwame, despite his father's warnings, continued seeing Ajoa. Part of him wanted to believe that his father was wrong, that perhaps Ajoa had simply been having a bad day when the incident occurred. Part of him was tired of being alone, and Ajoa, sensing that she was close to achieving her goal, began pressuring for a deeper commitment. "Kwame," she said one evening as they sat in his car, overlooking the ocean at Labadi Beach. "Where is this relationship going? We have been seeing each other for 2 months now. I need to know if you're serious about me." Kwame was quiet for a moment. Was he serious about her? He was not sure. But he was 35, successful, and tired of his father's endless tests and searches. "I am serious," he finally said. "Would you like to meet my father?" Ajoa's heart nearly burst with joy. This was the final hurdle. If she could win over Kwame's father, she would secure her future. "I would be honored," she said, her voice trembling with what seemed like genuine emotion. The meeting was arranged for the following Sunday. Ajoa spent days preparing. She bought a modest but elegant dress, nothing too flashy, to show respect. She practiced being demure, respectful, humble. She rehearsed calling him daddy, in that sweet way that older Ghanaian men seem to love. When the day arrived, Ajoa rode with Kwame to the mansion. Her jaw nearly dropped when she saw the property, the towering gates, the manicured gardens, the sheer size of the estate. This was wealth beyond even what she had imagined. Inside, the house was magnificent. Marble floors, expensive art, imported furniture. Everything spoke of taste and tremendous wealth. Kofi was sitting in the living room reading a newspaper when they entered. He was dressed simply but elegantly in a traditional white kaftan. He looked up slowly as they approached. Ajoa did not recognize him. The old man she had slapped had been dirty, wearing torn clothes, hunched and defeated. This distinguished gentleman looked nothing like that beggar, or so she thought. "Good afternoon, sir," she said, her voice syrupy sweet. She approached and bent slightly in a respectful greeting. "It is such an honor to meet you. Kwame has told me so much about you." Kofi studied her face carefully. Recognition flickered in his eyes, but he said nothing. He simply nodded. "Good afternoon, my dear. Please sit down." For the next hour, Ajoa performed brilliantly. She complimented the house tastefully. She asked respectful questions about Kofi's business background. She laughed softly at appropriate moments. She spoke about her own business with pride, but not arrogance. She mentioned her mother with affection. She painted a picture of herself as a successful but humble woman who valued family and tradition. Kofi listened, his face impassive. He asked her about her values, her beliefs, her treatment of others. "I believe that all people deserve respect," Ajoa said earnestly, looking Kofi directly in the eye. "Rich or poor, young or old, educated or not, we are all human beings with dignity. My father taught me that, and I've tried to live by that principle every day of my life." The words were ash in her mouth, but she spoke them with conviction. When the meeting ended, Ajoa felt triumphant. She had conquered the final challenge. As soon as she left, Kwame turned to his father. "So, what did you think?" Kofi was silent for a long moment. Then he said quietly, "She's a liar. Everything about her is false. Every word she spoke was rehearsed. Every gesture was calculated. That woman has no more respect for others than a snake has love for its prey." "Papa, she is the woman who slapped me," Kofi said firmly. "She looked me in the eye today and spoke about respecting all people, but she did not recognize me because she never truly saw me that day. I was not human to her. I was just an obstacle, a nuisance, something beneath her notice." "Maybe she has changed," Kwame suggested, though he did not sound convinced. "People do not change in 2 months," Kofi replied. "Not in their core. She is performing for you, my son. And the moment she has what she wants, the moment you marry her, the mask will come off and you will see who she really is. But by then, it will be too late. Kwame ran his hands over his face, exhausted. What do you want me to do, Papa? And it based on something that happened months ago? Based on your suspicions? I want you to test her, Kofi said. One more time. Let me test her. And if she passes, I will give you my blessing. But if she fails, and she will fail, you must promise me you will end this relationship. Kwame thought for a long moment, then nodded. One more test. But that is all. I cannot live my life this way forever, Papa. Agreed, Kofi said. One more test. And in his heart, he already knew exactly how that test would go. The engagement announcement. Despite his father's objections, Kwame proposed to Ajoa 3 weeks later. It happened at a beach resort in Bujua during a romantic weekend getaway. Kwame had rented the entire property for privacy. As the sun set over the Atlantic, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, he went down on one knee in the sand. Ajoa Minsa, will you marry me? The ring was spectacular, a 5-carat diamond that caught the fading light and threw it back in brilliant flashes. Ajoa screamed with joy. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. She threw her arms around him, tears streaming down her face. But if anyone had looked closely, they would have seen that her eyes were not on Kwame, they were on the ring. The engagement was announced on social media the next day. The photos were perfect, the beautiful couple, the stunning ring, the romantic setting. Within hours, the post had thousands of likes and comments. Power couple. Relationship goals. Ajoa's phone did not stop ringing. Friends congratulated her. Business associates sent messages. Her mother called, her voice uncertain but hopeful. Are you sure about this, Ajoa? Do you truly love this man? Of course I do, Mama, Ajoa lied smoothly. He is everything I have ever wanted. I mean, do you love him? Not his money, not his status, but him as a person? Mama, why do you always have to question me? I said yes, did I not? Now please, I have 1,000 things to plan. I need to go. She hung up before her mother could respond. Ama Minsa sat alone in her living room, staring at the phone. A deep sense of foreboding settled over her heart. She had prayed for her daughter to find love, but this did not feel like love. This felt like something else, something that would end in heartbreak and regret. She got on her knees and prayed more fervently than she ever had before. The grand engagement party. The engagement party was planned for 6 weeks later, giving Ajoa time to organize every detail of what she envisioned as the social event of the season. She rented the ballroom at the luxurious Kempinski Hotel, Gold Coast City. She hired the best caterers, the finest florists, the most prestigious event planners. She designed custom invitations with gold foil lettering. She selected a live band that usually performed at presidential functions. No expense was spared. After all, she was marrying a billionaire. Everything had to be perfect. She chose her dress with meticulous care. A stunning white gown with crystal beading that sparkled like stars. It cost more than some people's cars, but she did not care. She would be the most beautiful woman in the room, and everyone would know it. The guest list numbered over 300 people, Ghana's elite, business moguls, politicians, celebrities, socialites. Everyone who was anyone had been invited. Kwame's father received his invitation with a heavy heart. He knew what he had to do, and he knew it would break his son's heart. But better a broken heart now than a destroyed life later. On the day of the party, Kofi made his preparations. He dressed in his finest suit, a custom-tailored black tuxedo that cost more than most people earned in a year. He looked distinguished, powerful, every inch the billionaire he was. But he had one more costume to wear first. The engagement party began at 7 in the evening. By 6:30, guests were already arriving, their expensive cars forming a parade of luxury at the hotel entrance. Ajoa stood near the entrance in her dazzling gown, greeting guests with her rehearsed smile. Kwame stood beside her in a sharp tuxedo, looking handsome but somehow distant. Ama Minsa arrived early, wearing a simple but elegant dress. She hugged her daughter tightly. "I am proud of you," she whispered, though her voice lacked conviction. "Thank you, Mama," Ajoa replied, already looking past her to see who else was arriving. Inside, the ballroom was transformed into a palace. White roses and orchids covered every surface. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the room. Round tables were draped in cream silk with gold accents. A champagne fountain bubbled elegantly in the corner. The live band played soft jazz as guests mingled. By 7:30, the party was in full swing. Laughter filled the air. Champagne flowed freely. People congratulated the couple, took photos, admired Ajoa's ring. Ajoa was in her element. She floated through the room like royalty, soaking up the attention, the envy, the admiration. This was everything she had ever wanted: status, recognition, wealth on display. At 8 o'clock, Kwame took the microphone to make a toast. "Good evening, everyone," he said, his deep voice carrying across the room. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate with us tonight. Ajoa and I are honored to have you here." Applause rippled through the crowd. "I want to especially thank my father," Kwame continued, "who could not be here at the start of the party but will be arriving shortly. He sends his apologies and his love." Ajoa smiled brightly, though inside she was irritated. Where was the old man? This was supposed to be perfect, and his absence was a flaw in her flawless evening. Kwame was about to continue when a commotion near the entrance caught everyone's attention. A figure had appeared in the doorway. It was an old man, dressed in torn, dirty clothes. His shirt was stained and faded. His trousers had holes at the knees. His sandals were cracked and worn. He looked completely out of place among the elegantly dressed guests. Security guards immediately moved toward him. "Sir, this is a private event," one guard said firmly. "You cannot be here." But the old man kept walking, moving slowly but deliberately into the ballroom. Guests turned to stare, whispers spreading like wildfire through the crowd. Ajoa, who had been near the champagne fountain, spun around at the commotion. Her eyes landed on the old man, and her face immediately contorted with rage. She stormed toward him, her heels clicking angrily against the marble floor. "Who let this beggar in here?" she shouted, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Security, remove this man immediately." The old man stopped walking and looked directly at her. Ajoa's eyes narrowed as she got closer, and then recognition flashed across her face. "Wait," she said, her voice dripping with venom. "I know you. You're that filthy man from the shopping center. The one I had to teach a lesson." She turned to the crowd, her voice rising dramatically. "This man has been stalking me. He has been following me for months. He is obsessed with me. He probably found out about my engagement and came here to ruin it out of jealousy." Gasps filled the room. Guests pulled out their phones, recording. Kwame pushed through the crowd. "Ajoa, what is going on?" "This disgusting man has been harassing me," Ajoa declared, pointing at the old man with a perfectly manicured finger. "He followed me at the mall. He stared at me with those creepy eyes. I had to slap him to make him understand that he could not disrespect me. And now he is here, at my engagement party, trying to ruin the happiest day of my life." The old man said nothing. He simply stood there, calm and dignified despite his shabby appearance. Ajoa's fury reached its peak. She stepped closer to him, her face twisted with disgust. "Look at yourself," she spat. "Look at your filthy rags. Look at your dirty, pathetic existence. You are nothing. You have nothing. You will always be nothing. And you dare to come to my party? To stand in front of all these important people and embarrass yourself?" She turned to the security guards. "Throw him out. Drag him out if you have to. I want him gone. Now." The guards moved forward, but the old man raised his hand. "Wait," he said, his voice quiet but somehow commanding. And then something happened that no one expected. The old man reached up and removed the cloth cap from his head. He straightened his posture. And as he did, his entire presence seemed to change. "My name," he said clearly, his voice now carrying the authority of someone who is used to being obeyed, "is Kofi Asani. I'm Kwame's father, and I am the founder and chairman of Asani Tech Industries." The room fell into absolute silence. Ajoa's face went from red with anger to white with shock in seconds. That is impossible," she whispered. But even as she said it, she could see it now, the resemblance to Kwame, the intelligent eyes, the bearing of a man who commanded respect despite his clothing. Kofi looked around the room at all the stunned faces. For the past several months, he continued, I have been walking the streets of Accra disguised as a poor man. I did this to test people, to see who would show kindness to someone they believed had nothing, to find, for my son, a woman with a truly good heart, a woman who would treat all people with dignity and respect, regardless of their wealth or status. He turned his gaze to Ajoa, and his eyes were filled with sadness, not anger. You failed that test, he said simply. Not once, but multiple times. You slapped me outside a shopping center because 3/3 Z Continue believed I was beneath you. You insulted me, degraded me, and treated me as less than human, all because of my appearance. Ajoa's legs felt weak. She looked around desperately, but found no support, only shocked faces and judgmental stares. But perhaps that was just a bad day, Kofi continued. Perhaps you were stressed, frightened, reacting poorly. So I watched you. I followed you to see how you treated others when you thought no one important was watching. He began to walk slowly around the room as he spoke, and every eye followed him. I saw you berate a young waiter at a restaurant because your water was not cold enough. I heard you insult a parking attendant for taking too long. I watched you push past an elderly woman without apology. I observed you snap at your own staff, calling them stupid and worthless. Every interaction revealed the same pattern. You treat people according to what you believe they can do for you. Tears began streaming down Ajoa's face, but they were tears of humiliation, not remorse. And then, Kofi said, his voice soft but carrying, you came to my home. You sat in my living room. You looked me in the eye and told me that you believed all people deserve respect, rich or poor. You told me that your father taught you to value human dignity. You performed perfectly, saying all the right words. He stopped walking and faced her directly. But they were lies. All of it was lies. You did not recognize me because you never truly saw me. When you looked at me outside that mall, you did not see a human being. You saw an obstacle, a nuisance, something to be removed. And that tells me everything I need to know about your character. The silence in the room was deafening. Kwame stood frozen, his face a mixture of shock, anger, and heartbreak. Ajoa found her voice, though it came out as a desperate whisper. Kwame, please, let me explain. I did not know. I am so sorry. I can change, please. Kwame looked at his father, then at Ajoa, then at the ring on her finger that sparkled under the lights. So beautiful, so expensive, so empty of meaning. Give me the ring, he said quietly. Kwame, no, please. Give me the ring. With shaking hands, Ajoa pulled the ring from her finger and placed it in his palm. The moment it left her hand, she felt as if her entire future had slipped away with it. Kwame looked at the ring for a long moment, then at the woman he had almost married. You are beautiful, Ajoa, he said sadly. You are intelligent and successful. You could have been an amazing partner. But beauty fades and success can disappear. Character, true character, is all that lasts. And yours is rotten at the core. He turned to the crowd. The engagement is off. I apologize to everyone for wasting your time. Please stay, enjoy the food and drink. But there will be no wedding. With that, he walked toward his father. Kofi placed a hand on his son's shoulder, and together they walked toward the exit. The crowd parted to let them pass, and as they did, a sleek black helicopter could be heard landing on the hotel's rooftop helipad. Ajoa stood alone in the center of the ballroom in her expensive white dress, her makeup running, her perfect world shattered. Guests began whispering. Some left immediately. Others stayed but avoided looking at her. A few brave souls approached to offer sympathy, but most treated her as if she had a contagious disease. Ama Mensa pushed through the crowd and wrapped her arms around her sobbing daughter. Mama, what have I done? Ajoa wailed. You have learned a hard lesson, my child. Ama said gently, tears running down her own cheeks. The question now is, what will you do with it? The aftermath. The story spread across Accra like wildfire. By the next morning, it was the top trending topic on social media. News websites published articles. Radio shows discussed it. Everyone had an opinion. Some people were sympathetic to Ajoa. arguing that everyone makes mistakes. But most praise Kofi for his wisdom and Kwame for his strength in walking away. The story became a cautionary tale, shared in homes and schools and churches across the city. Treat everyone with respect because you never know who they really are. For Ajoa, the weeks that followed were the darkest of her life. Friends distanced themselves. Business contacts stopped calling. Her social media accounts were flooded with criticism. She closed her salons and hid in her home, unable to face the world. But her mother stayed by her side. "You have a choice now," Amma told her one morning as they sat together. "You can let this destroy you, or you can let it transform you." "How can I transform, Mama? Everyone hates me. My life is ruined." "Your old life is ruined," Amma corrected gently. "But you can build a new one, a better one. You can become the person you pretended to be. It will take time, humility, and genuine change. But it is possible." Slowly, painfully, Ajoa began to change. She volunteered at homeless shelters, serving food with her own hands. She worked with organizations helping the poor. She listened to people's stories, really listened, and learned to see them as human beings, not as categories or classes. It was hard. Every day, she had to fight against years of entitlement and pride. Every day, she had to choose humility over arrogance, service over superiority. But gradually, genuinely, she changed. 1 year later, Kwame sat in his study, reviewing business reports. His father walked in and sat down. "I have news," Kofi said with a small smile. "What news?" "I saw Ajoa today. She was volunteering at the shelter I visit sometimes." Kwame looked up, surprised. "Really? She has changed, my son. Truly changed. Not performing for anyone, just genuinely serving others. I watched her clean a wound on a homeless man's foot with such tenderness. I heard her speaking with an elderly woman, listening to her story with real compassion. This is not the same woman from a year ago." Kwame was quiet for a moment. "I'm glad she found her way. But that chapter of my life is closed." "I know," Kofi said. "I'm not suggesting you reopen it. I simply wanted you to know that your rejection, painful as it was for her, may have saved her soul. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to us is the best thing that could happen to us." 6 months after that, Kwame met someone new, a kindergarten teacher named Abina who drove an old car, lived in a modest apartment, and treated everyone she met with genuine kindness and respect. When Kofi met her, disguised once more as a poor man asking for directions, she smiled at him warmly and took time to help him, never once looking at him with disdain or impatience. "She is the one," Kofi told his son that evening. And he was right. As for Ajoa, she never married the billionaire. But she found something more valuable. She found herself. She found compassion, humility, and a purpose beyond wealth and status. And years later, when people told the story of the arrogant woman who slapped a poor man and lost everything, they also told the second half. The story of how she rose from her ashes, not with money or beauty, but with character. Because in the end, that was the only wealth that truly mattered. In life, we often judge others by what we see on the outside, their clothes, their possessions, their status. But true character is revealed in how we treat those who could do nothing for us. Kindness costs nothing, but means everything. Pride comes before a fall, but humility can lift us higher than we ever imagined. Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.